Okay.
Good evening and welcome to our fourth parents series series on mental health and substance abuse. Tonight we have Pat Wilkie, is a clinical program coordinator at Aldersgate, a community-based counseling agency located in Willow Grove. Pat has 25 years of experience at Aldersgate, providing counseling support to children, teens, adults, couples, and families. Pat is a family therapist with a clinical experience in working with teens, providing parenting support, substance use and education, prevention and intervention, and grief and loss of counseling. Pat, welcome to the Wissahickon School District tonight, and we look forward to hearing your presentation.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Kelly, and it's a pleasure to be here. So I'm going to stop my video. How do I do that? Stop my video. Okay. So you might look at this and say, why are we still talking about COVID? Like 2 years ago, it was 2 weeks. Everybody shut down for 2 weeks. Teachers sent home enough work for 2 weeks, and then we'll be back. And then it was the rest of the school year. And then it came back in the fall that was still virtual. And so there didn't seem to be an end. And so at this point, a lot of parents and a lot of teens or kids are just tired of the whole pandemic. They're losing steam, they're frustrated. And so I thought this might be a good time to just review some of the issues related to our teens today, as related to mental health and substance use. And so let's start with just talking about the basic goals of adolescence under normal circumstances, which is not what we have today. So the normal, for adolescents, their goals right now are to build and maintain social relationships. That's the most important thing for them right now. They're exploring their identities and they're establishing a sense of themselves apart from their caregivers. We in the field call this separation and individuation. Not that they're separating physically from their parents, but emotionally, they're trying to figure out who they are, what their values are, what did their parents teach them, what have they learned out in the world, and where do they fall? What are their values and belief systems? And in many, many cases, that does provide some conflict in the home when teens start thinking for themselves and questioning adults and pushing back on rules and boundaries and things like that. So that's in of itself what the issues are related to adolescence. But then we have COVID. And in the beginning, it was extremely stressful for parents and teens. And all of these goals were magnified, and teens really had a hard time navigating. So the most important thing for them was socialization, and that was the biggest loss for a lot of them. They were in lockdown initially, they couldn't hang out with their friends. They were limited to social media, which is not always the healthiest way of connecting with other people. And they were dealing with, as if adolescence isn't difficult enough, they had to deal with more stress related to boredom, isolation, fear, loss, and being stuck at home. For many of them, it was the first time they had to learn about virtual learning and being responsible, which required skill sets that a lot of young people, even especially middle school and grade school students, did not have yet in their wheelhouse. I mean, it was, these are skills to learn to be independent and do things like that as far as school is concerned, is more of a high school and pre-college experience for kids. And they were all thrown into this world of virtual learning. So now that we seem to be, at the risk of, saying otherwise, I mean, we seem to be on the downside as far as COVID, but now kids are dealing with uncertainty. The mask mandates seem to be changing by the week. There's uncertainty even now about, is there another variant possibly coming? Is there going to be another surge? Are we going to have to go back to some sort of restriction? And teens missed in-person contact with friends. There were a lot of losses related to not playing sports, especially the seniors who were getting ready to graduate and who were hoping for a scholarship. their jobs, other activities, and then the loss of daily family and school routines and schedules. There was also the loss of milestones, extracurricular activities, family vacations. The students who graduated from high school, I mean, no one saw that one coming, that we were going to be doing virtual graduations. And the decision is, do parents send their kids to college? Are they going to be safe in the dorm? How does this affect their adjustment to college? And certainly graduation, holidays, and spring break, there was a limited amount of travel. So things certainly changed for them. So when it comes to substance use, this is not new for sure, but it certainly increased during COVID. And I had some teens that were very wise and found ways of getting alcohol and marijuana. They had people dropping things off under their window and at night and they went out and got the stuff. I mean, you think that they couldn't find anything if they were in lockdown, but kids are very creative. And so, alcohol, marijuana use, and nicotine use increased during COVID. And it's always been an issue in adolescence for kids to experiment and test the waters. And then we talk about, there's some specific things related to vaping. They think it's perfectly fine, but it's not water vapor, it's an aerosol. They think it's because it was initially brought into play for adults to stop smoking cigarettes, it quickly morphed into targeting teens, very similar to the generations ago where teens were targeted with ads for nicotine. And, I don't know about you, but I don't know any adult that's vaping candy flavored vaping fluids. It's all geared to target teens. And there's always the issue of addiction. There are a lot of middle school students that start using vape products, and by the time they're in high school, they're addicted. And it's very, very easily available to kids. All you have to look in like Wawa, 7-Eleven, in the corner stores, it's easily accessible to kids. And it's hard for parents to keep up with what is going on in the world of substance use and teen experimentation. So why do kids use? Just like anybody would use, adults included. Anxiety, boredom, curiosity, what's it like? The pressure to fit in. Along with anxiety, there's an increase in depression. And what I found was, prior to COVID, if kids had anxiety and depression, it went up exponentially after COVID. And if they didn't have it before, they started to have it during COVID. And so all of this stress compiled with normal adolescent functioning is, to escape, to have fun with their friends and relax. Those are the reasons that the reasons for substance use have not stopped from one generation to the next. So why is this a problem? Some parents think, oh, well, kids will be kids. I drank when I was a kid. We smoked. It's fine. It's no big deal. At least they're doing that and they're not doing harder drugs. For some parents, though, they don't understand that, the marijuana that they might have smoked was only 4% THC. Now it's up to 17%. And there are other things that are being put in it, which are life, threatening to our kids. In the past, I think it was a year ago, maybe in June, or 2 years ago, the laws changed for nicotine products. The rules became more strict. And so kids can be cited for possession of nicotine products if they're underage. And if they get caught and they get a citation, depending on the circumstances, they have the potential of losing their license or delaying getting their license. They might have to do community service. They might have to pay a fine. They could have a record. And, I've heard lots of stories where kids have lost college scholarships or entrances into college if they've gotten something related to a legal consequence before they even started school. And if they're lucky, they can be given the opportunity to do an alternative sentencing program, which would be an educational program, which I will talk about. and they won't have a record, and they may not have to lose their license. But the other thing is there's such an increase in kids smoking and using marijuana that they don't understand the legal ramifications beyond just possession. Because if they are driving around and their headlight is out, or they go through a stop sign, or the police are just suspicious and they pull them over and they smell weed and they take them to the hospital to get a blood test, there's the serious potential that they could be charged with a DUI, because there's a zero tolerance, for underage kids for marijuana. Now, certainly legalization of marijuana or decriminalization and then medical marijuana are presenting a whole other list of issues related to that. But even if there's medical marijuana allowed, you have to be 21. So kids under 21 should not be using. And there are serious legal and financial consequences. It could be up to $5,000 for a DUI. And if they get a DUI underage, then that's involving, they have to become involved in juvenile probation. So we want to prevent our kids from getting into that kind of trouble. It's just so difficult as parents to keep their kids safe. A lot of kids they think they're mature, but they don't understand that their brain is continuing to grow until they're 25. And the part of the brain that's responsible for decision-making, self-control, delayed gratification, and impulse control is the last part of the brain to develop. And so, they're at 16, 17, 18, they're driving a car, they're possibly experimenting with substances, and their brain isn't even developed yet to be able to make responsible decisions. And so the younger they use a substance, the more damage there is to their brain, and it impacts the brain development that is still going on with them. So there's memory loss, there's less blood flow to the brain, they have a slower reaction time. So when they talk about the differences between marijuana and alcohol, people who are under the influence of alcohol drive faster than they think they're driving. And if they're under the influence of marijuana, they drive slower than they think they are. And impacting is reaction time, which can save a life. There's also, information that there's a lower IQ due to cannabis use. I know that years ago, I had a teenager who was about 16 or 17, and he had been a regular pot smoker, and he was not happy with his SAT scores. So he decided, maybe I should just cool it with the weed. And he did. And when he took the test over again, he was pleasantly surprised by the increase in the score. So for him, there was a definite, cause and effect related to his use of, marijuana. It's said that teens that start drinking at age 15 have a 4 times greater chance of developing a drinking problem than those who wait until the age of 21. You're more likely to have an alcohol problem if you start younger. So that's why it's important to educate our kids about the effects of substance use. So how can parents help? What can we do? So now the weather's starting to get nicer. There's more daylight, and school's about, around the corner. It's almost over for this year. Kids are having more free time. There's a little bit more freedom now because a lot of people have been vaccinated and having their booster shots, but yet they're still getting sick. So that, that causes some anxiety. And the nicer weather certainly offers more temptation for teens, especially last year. Maybe there was their first summer, and they're done with being stuck in the house and being away from their friends, and they tried to make up for lost time. And so they started to use more and possibly got themselves into trouble. So what can parents do? You could do it, mental health check-in with your teen, just see how they're doing. And another slide, I'm going to talk about some suggestions about how parents can talk to their teens to engage in them and reduce the chances of having conflict. So, one of the things that we as parents need to do is to teach positive coping skills. So, modeling appropriate adult alcohol use is very important. Clearly, you're over 21, perfectly okay to be using alcoholic beverages. but it's a good idea to be cautious about the messages that you are giving. I don't know if you remember this, but in the beginning stages of COVID and lockdown, when parents were thrown into homeschooling their children, which was never their plan, and as they're trying to manage their own jobs and keeping things together at home and dealing with multiple kids trying to do multiple screens and homework, there were jokes out on Facebook and on billboards about like back to school specials for alcohol. It's like, I need this, I need this drink. And so I think if parents say this to their kids and say, oh my God, I had such a day, I need a drink, or this homeschooling is driving me crazy, kids hear that and they go, oh, well then that's why you can, so that's a good reason to use, so I can do that. Stay involved with your kids and their friends and their activities, and encourage alcohol-free activities. We'll talk a little bit more about communicating and discussing family values and setting clear rules and expectations. I'm often surprised by the number of parents who don't actually sit down with their kids and specifically lay out their values and expectations related to substance use. Their kids will go out with their friends. They might not even know whether they're going out to a party or just hanging out somewhere. They may just say, don't do anything stupid, or use common sense. Like, what does that mean to a kid? The idea is to be really specific and say, in this house, we don't drink until we're 21. The expectation is that you do not indulge in any substances until you're 21. And the reason is for your mental health and well-being and your safety. And it's certainly, if you as a parent have knowledge that your family history is such that your kids are at higher risk, please have that conversation with them and let them know that just like if they had a family history of heart disease or diabetes, which would put them at higher risk, so does alcohol. So does alcohol and drug use history.
Excuse me, let's make sure our participants are on mute, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this evening. If you can make sure you're on mute.
Thank you, Dr. Dwan.
Thank you.
Okay, so here's some suggestions on ways that parents can talk to their kids and engage them. And kids have a short attention span for lectures. The shorter the conversation, the fewer the words, the better impact. And they don't want to lecture, but they will hear that you care about them, and to say, I'm worried about you, I care about your health, I want you to make good decisions now so that you're prepared for the future. Be specific about what you've noticed. Just say, I noticed you're coming home late, you're hanging out with different people, I'm worried about this. Tell me a little bit more about what you're up to. Talk about how you feel, that you're worried and why you're worried, and about your concern. And sometimes it's hard for us as parents to practice active listening because we want to jump right in and offer advice and tell them what to do. And as I said before, this is the time of their adolescent period where they're learning to be thinkers of their own, and to separate emotionally from their parents. And it's hard sometimes for parents to let go and treat them differently. And, you want to just, repeat back, like just say, I'm not, and you can say to them, like, I'm not sure I got that. Did you, is this what I heard you say? That this was what you're worried about? Let's talk a little bit more about that. And just be more open-ended in your conversations and questions to leave them they have the opportunity to respond in a way that they don't feel is going to get them in trouble. And then again, here we talk about being specific. Tell them exactly what you want to do, and use positive words. It's not so much to say, I don't want you drinking until you're 21, is I want you to stay away from alcohol until you're 21, until you're better able to make good decisions and your brain is done developing and there'll be minimal damage for you. And then tell them what you'll do, to listen and support them. And some families actually have a code word or phrase for their kids. And for instance, let's say a teen is out with their friends and they say, oh, so-and-so's, we're going to this party, so-and-so got some alcohol. and some weed. We're going to go to this party. And you say, okay, I have to call my parents. So you call your parents and you're within earshot of your friends. And you say, Mom, Dad, can I go so-and-so? I'm going to go to a party. And you just say something like pretty please, or you have a code word. And then that's your parents' knowledge to say, no, you can't, and I'm coming to get you right now. So you save face with the friends, but you let your parents help you, support you, and provide safety. And again, just use open-ended questions, not not so much like how was your day, but what was the best part of your day? What was the most challenging part? How do you feel about how you handle things today? The more you can have an open-ended conversation with your kids, the more likely they are to chat with you and to share things. And some of the best times to talk to your kids are in the car, because you're not looking at them and their defenses are down, and right before they go to bed. They're a little more relaxed and we're open to having a conversation with their parents. So the United States Department of Health and Human Services talks about 6 protective factors that help with minimizing problems with their teens. And they are nurturing and attachment, providing unconditional love and affection to your children, having some knowledge of parent and child development. And towards the end, I will share with you some really great resources that parents could look into to increase their knowledge about the developmental assets that are pertinent to adolescents and what the expectations are, and just to see how you are on target. Like if you're on this call, then it tells me that you're concerned about your children and you're interested in learning more and improving your communication with them and helping to keep them safe and prepare for their future. Parental resilience, you talk about how resilient are the parents, how willing are they to provide support and unconditional love and reduce criticism of their children. Social connections, are they involved in sports, after school activities? Are they in the school play? Do they belong to the Scouts? Do they take martial arts? Are they in a robotics club? Do they have a religious organization of which they are a part, which provides them opportunity to connect with other kids who share their values? Concrete support for parents. Again, we'll talk about that at the end with the resource list. And then learning about, what's the social and emotional competence of children. And the idea is, our job as parents is basically to put ourselves out of a job, that we're not needed anymore. Of course, we're always going to be needed to our children, but, we're not tying our, 11-year-old shoes, I hope, and we're not going to college with our young adult to buy college books for them and set up things for them. The goal is to teach them all the skills that they need to live independently, to be responsible, because you are giving them a gift by teaching them these skills to prepare them for life, because it increases their self-esteem and their competency, and they feel good. How many of you remember that when your kids were little and they got excited when they could tie their shoes or get dressed, like mommy, I do, or look at me? And that's what you want to do on a much greater level with your teens, is to give them opportunities to feel good about their skill sets, which will prepare them for their future. So when I was talking to you about our teens and getting citations related to marijuana, alcohol, or nicotine, Baldur's Gate does offer programs that are funded by the county. So Montgomery County residents don't have to pay for these programs. And these are intervention programs, and not like intervention where we have to send them to rehab, but intervention in the way of we're going to intervene now and prevent future problems. What's great about these programs are they are not lecture programs. They are not programs where the facilitator or the counselor is lecturing them and making them feel bad about what they shouldn't be doing. They use skill set called brief intervention, motivational interviewing, where they talk to the students about what their goals are. And then will the behavior that they're engaging in now with regard to substance use, will that help them to achieve their goals, or will that impede their growth and their goal setting? And so the idea is to present alternatives, discuss pros and cons, express concerns in a way where they are given the information to make the decision on their own. You know, at this age, kids are not going to listen to what the adults say if they're lecturing. But if the situation is such that we pose questions to them and we challenge them and say, well, you know, you tell me your goal is you want to save money to buy a car. Well, if you're spending $25 or $35 a week on weed or whatever, how does that help you save money for a car? You know, if you want to get to college or play sports, what will happen if you get caught with alcohol or marijuana? You know, and it's more of a cost benefit to kids. So the marijuana program is 4 sessions once a week. The Teen Intervene is for alcohol, it's 3 sessions. And this is one of the programs where the 3rd session requires a parent to participate, which is great because it allows the parent to express their concern, talk to their child about what their concerns are related to teen alcohol use, and hopefully engage in a more positive conversation with them. And then In-Depth is a new program that's been out for about a year or so, developed by the American Lung Association to specifically target nicotine use, whether it is smoking, vaping, or ingesting, dipping, things like that, nicotine. So if any parents are concerned about their child's or teens in early experimentation, they come home, they've smelled with alcohol, even if they didn't get into trouble. If they're concerned, if they found some vape products, if they come home smelling like, if their car smells like what marijuana, or they smell their teen's breath and there's alcohol on it, well, feel free to, you can reach out to Aldersgate and discuss it with me or with the office administrator, and we can talk about, what options there are and provide some free intervention services and education for your teen. So Kelly, I'm going to provide these resources for you so you can share this with the parents. One of the things I wanted to talk about, I wanted to go back to teens and what they're dealing with, and depression and anxiety and fears. So it seems like there's always something new. And so right now our kids are dealing with the social media, the impact of social media, body shaming, bullying. I mean, some kids can't walk down a school corridor without being bullied or people making fun of them or singling them out. They're also learning about how to be in a relationship with someone. And sometimes our kids get caught up in an unhealthy relationship. They might be pressured to engage in sexual activity. And then they're afraid to tell their parents. So there's a lot of additional issues that are concerning teens today. And when you look at the current state of the world, now our kids are dealing with global fear and anxiety. There's this potential threat of, another country using nuclear weapons or bio weapons. And our kids are concerned about this. They see things on social media, they hear things in the news. And so the idea is to check in with your kids and your teens, and just like any other conversation, answer the questions with an age-appropriate response where your children and your teens can understand it, that they're able to process and understand what their concerns are about. And and not to mention the fact that parents are also overwhelmed. Like I said before, parents unless you grew up in a home that was homeschooling, was the pretty much the standard. Parents were completely blindsided by doing homeschooling and monitoring their kids, while at the same time trying to maintain a job if they were lucky to keep their job during COVID, or they worked overtime because they were essential workers. increased stress, because you can imagine that if parents and families were already struggling and having some conflict, imagine what it was like being stuck in the house with everybody and very little privacy and very little outlet. So parents have worries about finances, about jobs, if they're part of the sandwich generation and they have older parents to be, to care for. So you have collectively, everybody is overwhelmed with stress. So there are some really good websites for parents to go on to learn about helping your kids with education about alcohol and drug use and helping them to quit. And then important information about teenage brains. Like, for instance, when we do this with our clients here, again, we don't lecture them, but we show a picture of a brain scan, and says, this is what a 16-year-old's brain looks like when they've been smoking pot for 2 years. That can be more powerful than me saying to them, you shouldn't be smoking, it's going to cause a problem in your brain. When they see it in a visual way, it's much more impactful for them. And there's information for parents about how to keep their children healthy. And also there are some great webinars and parent support. So I want to talk about one that's coming up that I know I'm going to log on and watch. And there's one the next week on Tuesday. This Operation Parent is the website, and it's a free webinar on understanding childhood trauma and how to help our teens and children recover, because kids are having more and more trauma. And we're not just talking about big trauma, we're talking about little trauma. Like, how many kids lost a grandparent or a loved one during COVID related to COVID, and anything else that could be detrimental to their lives. And so how do we as adults, as parents, help our kids learn to navigate and process overwhelming events and give them the skill set to handle these things and provide as much security as we possibly can, given our own limitations. And there's some great websites for kids' health and child mind that you can go on with articles related to all different kinds of issues related to parenting, co-parenting, depression, anxiety, ADHD. The Center for Parenting Education has a lot of articles and information related to different topics as well. Empowering parents, I give that resource out to parents, but I also make it clear that, full disclosure, the people that run that website actually provide a parent coaching program that they charge for, but I don't recommend that parents necessarily pay for anything. I'm sending you the resource because there is a great article list where parents could go on and look for information about challenging behaviors. If your kids are a little bit more rebellious and challenging and have communication issues, I'm on their mailing list, so I periodically get emails and articles related to different topics. So I think they would be really helpful for parents. Again, I know you're all overwhelmed with multiple responsibilities, but if you're so inclined and you have the time, log on. You can always have your teens log on to some of them, like Kids Health and Child Mind, see what they come up with if they look for a particular topic that's interesting, or if, and that might also help to smooth over things with parents and say, if a kid picks something up on the internet at one of these websites and hands it to a parent, it might open the conversation a little bit easier. Say, I found this article, can we talk about this? And the Conversation Zone is a great website for parents with websites. The website also has new and upcoming and webinars that are on file there that you can watch at your leisure, and it's related to educating parents about teen substance use. And last but not least, there is a free program in Montgomery County called Triple P, Positive Parenting Program. And there's a phone number that you can call and discuss the option of participating in that. I think there might be virtual and in person, and there might be group and a couple individual sessions. So you could look into that, website and see if there's something that would help answer any of your parenting concerns. So again, if you're concerned about your child's experimentation, feel free to, check in, call Aldersgate and ask for more information. And I'm going to end there. And I'm going to stop record.